Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Porch Talk. It's our second episode on our special guest series. We're going to be here with assistant coach Shane Wicks from Honaker. This episode is sponsored to you by Cantor Holdings. If you live in Southwest Virginia or West Virginia, Eastern Kentucky, and you find yourself looking for equipment rental, give Cantor Holdings Equipment Rentals a call at 276-596-3078. With excavators, backhoe loaders, and jackhammers available. Cantor Holdings Equipment Rentals has equipment for any job, big or small. Be sure to give their Facebook page a like and follow to learn more about their equipment rentals, including their operator services. Then we also have White Pole Holders as another sponsor. If you have fishing poles that you would like to display safely on the wall or just need a way to get them off the floor, White Pole Holders has what you need. Sold on Etsy, he has a nice selection of fishing racks to fit your needs. Pine, oak, and poplar are just some of the wood used to craft these beautiful racks. Engravings are also available upon request. White Pole Holders has great customer service reviews. He's great as far as if you just want to message him or message me and I get you in touch with him. Engravings. He also does plaques, wedding rings, stuff like that. Just, like I said, get up with me and I'll get y'all in contact, and he can pretty much do anything you want as far as with the wood or anything. That's our two sponsors for this episode.
Yeah, we got Honaker High School assistant coach Shane Wicks with us, former standout at Richlands High School. We're going to dive into his playing career, now his coaching career a little bit. Hope get some stories and from him. Coach Wicks, welcome to the show. I guess the last time I really seen
guys.
I think the last time I really seen you or talked to you, we might have been up on the hill at Knox Creek, probably.
Yeah, probably was. Been a few years back.
Seems like it was a long time ago, but
yeah. I guess it's flown by, but it does seem like it's been a while.
Yeah. I guess we'll start off. We all have a story about, I guess, how we fell in love with football or whatever. But at what age can you remember really getting into it, and instead of just kind of being out there, but knowing that it was something you were passionate about or really enjoyed it?
Yeah, which for me, I actually started in Honaker in Little League, and I think they started us at 8. And at that time, I'd say honestly, at that age, up until about 10 or 11, baseball was probably my favorite sport. So then I moved to Richlands, and I liked football, but as I got a little bit older and realized, and I was okay at baseball, but I guess I had a knack more for football and really enjoyed it. Of course, contact and being able to hit people, that was always fun. But I probably really fell in love with it at age 11, probably.
Yeah, and especially, and I'm not sure with your age group, but I remember when I was growing up, that little league that they had out towards Richlands and Honaker, and we also had, of course, like the Buchanan County schools. That was a pretty big deal back in the day.
Yeah, for us, which it's changed so much now. They've started playing. When I was in Honaker, we played Castlewood and Lebanon. But when I was at Richlands, it was all in house. We had Cedar Bluff and Richlands had a couple teams. Raven had a team. Baptist Valley. You had enough kids out to where they had a self-sustaining league then. And now it's, which you see it in the high school ranks, it's dwindled off even down to the youth level to where they're having to pick up games. I think I'd heard they're even picking up John Battle and, down that way for games with Hurley and Richlands and Honaker, all those guys.
Yeah, I think it's the same way out towards Twin Valley way. They're even going towards West Virginia and playing in that league, and I think they even got to the point now where they're consolidated together into, I think, like the Coyotes or something like that.
We played in that. You naming off all those, the Baptist Valley and the Cedar Bluff, brought back a lot of memories because when I was in Little League, we played. I don't know that I guess we played Grundy and Hurley in games, but we didn't actually have like a. I think the league we played in and had an actual winner at the end of the year was the one in Richlands. We were in that one, and I remember we would beat a couple of those teams here and there, and then people would wonder, well, if we can play with them there, why can't we? I was like, well, they're having 3 or 4 teams come together.
Yeah.
All their
Yeah.
best players are going to one player. I was like, it's a little different, but I enjoyed that so much playing out, over there, and it was just different getting to go and play on that that field and that stadium, because at that time that was by far the biggest one we'd ever seen or been around, I guess. So
No, for sure.
that was a lot of fun back then. I guess after Little League, did you play? What kind of position was you playing in? We asked Coach Krieger about that, and he was a fullback in Little League and turned out to be a quarterback. Where did you start?
Offensively, I was a tight end, and defensively, I was a defensive end. Which, I mean, I wasn't the biggest kid out there, but I was one of the bigger kids in Little League. Actually had to cut weight to make weight to carry the ball. So
Oh yeah.
I was one of the bigger kids. But I mean, and to touch on all those teams coming together, I think we had 40 kids on an 8th grade team when I played. And
Wow.
I mean, you can't find many varsity teams now that
No.
have 40 kids.
Not at all.
No, it's like you said about the numbers. It's teams that have always had just crazy amounts of kids on the sidelines, whether they played or not. You can go every game I've watched this year has been, even big schools. It's just those numbers aren't as big as what they used to be.
Yeah, no, I think the only school I can remember, growing up and watching that had lower numbers, which it was before the consolidation to make Twin Valley, was Whitewood. And, they had smaller numbers, but that was right in the time they were getting ready to consolidate. But other than that, I mean, you had even single A schools that had 40 to 50 kids dressing, and they still had a JV in an 8th grade. And now you've got double A schools that struggle to even field one or the other.
Yeah.
Crazy. So going into your JV, you said you had about 40 some kids. So I guess from then and also in the high school, how competitive was it? Because I know during that time, Richlands was, like you said, you had a lot of kids competing to get on that roster.
Yeah, at that time we were very talented that time frame. I mean, we had just a good stretch of great talent year in and year out. To get on special teams as a sophomore or a freshman was a big deal. There weren't many freshmen or sophomores getting starting positions. I mean, you had guys like Caleb Jennings and Austin Fuller and Justin McCracken that didn't start until they were juniors. And that's saying something. Those guys were extremely talented.
Yeah. I remember growing up and watching your games, watching Austin Fuller, McCracken. I can't remember what age I was. I seen McCracken in the stands. Might have been after he graduated, and got him to sign a little football, because at that time, being a kid, I mean, you guys were celebrities to us, and I wasn't even from Richlands. I was, back towards Twin Valley. So.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch y'all play a lot. We were, because I think the year Caleb and that was 06, I think, wasn't it, when they won the state?
Yeah.
I was still in high school then, so the reason, Cameron, I don't blame you for not coming and watching us. But I missed that whole watching. I watched them after the season was over in playoffs. We went and watched them a lot, and it seems like I was able to come to a couple of your games, but I think that's when I was at Bluefield State maybe, so I didn't get to watch you much in high school. But I always remember it was like every year y'all would seem like, instead of just you reloaded, I guess, instead of rebuilding, you never had a down year there for a long, long stretch.
Yeah. We, like I said before, we were very fortunate. There was just a great stretch of talent, and there were a lot of guys. It was also, I mean, to speak to the numbers, you had guys that were very capable of playing both sides of the ball, but there were very few guys that had to. Like Caleb didn't have to play both sides. McCracken, which of course being a quarterback and how vital he was to what we did, he didn't play. You had very few guys that had to play both sides of the ball.
That's important, especially when it comes to those playoff games, those deep runs, just having guys rested up. Because, like you touched on right now, a lot of teams can't do that unless you do have the good turnout.
Yeah, it's changed even for the likes of Richlands and Graham and these schools that normally had better numbers. Your better players are playing Ironman football.
Yeah.
Who was I guess was you in the 8th grade? I'm guessing you played JV then, or how'd that work?
No, we actually had an 8th grade team, and it was strictly 8th graders, and then we had a full JV team as well. That was, of course, freshmen and sophomores, and then there were very few guys that didn't have to play at least their freshman year on JV. But that's then. Now, they're struggling to field JV teams.
Who was your coaches in 8th grade and JV?
Chris Altizer was one of them, and Moose Cochran. And Chris, I think he spent some time as a DC later on after I'd graduated, and I don't think he's coaching now. But in 8th grade, those two predominantly were the guys that fielded most of the coaching responsibilities.
Going from that 8th grade group up, when you do get into high school, as far as like varsity and stuff, because everybody knows Coach Mance and he's got a great reputation around here. How big of a change was that?
They had done a really good job of making it a feeder program, and of course, I mean, Coach Mance he's in a category with very few others in my eyes. But he did a great job of putting people in place, and they had just such a great staff altogether when I was in high school. In my opinion, it was one of the better coaching staffs in Virginia. You had guys that knew football and knew how to teach it and knew how to build culture. And, I mean, that speaks to the success that was sustained at that time.
Yeah.
I guess so. What year did you talk about getting in on special teams and stuff? People having getting lucky if they got on. Did you when did you start to get a lot of playing time, or just kind of getting a taste of it? What grade were you in?
A little bit towards the end of my freshman year, but really my sophomore year, I was getting some reps on offense and defense sparingly. Played all special teams, and a few reps here and there, but depth was so good at that time, and we had guys that were juniors and seniors that even if you were knocking on the door, the experience alone, they had you knocked out of the starting spot. So really, my sophomore year probably got a lot of playing time, but predominantly on special teams.
What I guess the year they won state. What grade were you in then?
That was my junior year.
Junior year. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're okay. So you're a little bit older. I thought you were maybe a couple of years behind them, but so you're going into your junior year, I guess. Obviously, I'm sure y'all had huge expectations. I can't remember what the rankings were. Were y'all? Did they have that back then and stuff? And were y'all ranked pretty high up going into the year?
Yeah, they had, which there's, I guess, a couple different ones. You've got the Virginia Preps and then the Max Preps and the Rivals, all those. But if we weren't, the top one or two team, we were pretty close. I can't remember exactly, but especially coming off the year before, we had made it to the state championship game and lost. Went 13-0 up until that game. So there was, which we lost a lot of guys. At that time we were graduating, 15 to 20 kids every year. So there were a lot of questions. Well, are they, can they repeat? But at that time, we were able to reload.
And kind of like you said, y'all fell short the year before, and you managed to get back there and achieve that year. What did that feel like, being able to get a taste of it and then get another chance at it, and as far as being successful?
Yeah, really, that whole season, regular season, I'm not sure that we played after halftime any regular season game. So we knew the standard. There was a standard that you didn't have to speak of. It was known, um, and that speaks to the culture that the coaches built. And we knew the expectations for us was state championship or bust. It was almost like a Friday Night Lights thing. We're here to win, and if we don't, then that's considered failure.
Yeah, I don't think I guess I didn't realize, or just don't remember. I didn't realize you all went to the state championship game the year before they won it. Um, let's go through that season. I guess that would have been your sophomore year. I guess first of all, I guess you were playing linebacker then, or where were you at?
Yeah, I played a little bit of Mike linebacker, and we played a 50 predominantly, or a 4-3 sometimes. So I'd play some outside linebacker too. Um, so my sophomore year, we played. It would have been Turner Ashby in the state championship game, and lost that one. I think the score was 27-14, and everybody, at least back this side of the state, thought we should have won it, and we had our opportunities, but that day they outplayed us. But that, and collectively, and a lot of people don't realize this, the whole time, at least I was in high school, we played. The worst we finished was my freshman year, and we lost in the state semi game. So I actually got the opportunity to play in 3 state championships.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't.
That's amazing.
I don't know if I just didn't know that or just had forgot, but that's a heck of a career right there. Just to say you were that much experience. When was the previous to that? When was the last time Ridgelands had won a state championship? Was it like 90 something?
Yeah, 1992 was the first one they won, and then of course we won the one in 2006.
Yeah, so that's a lot of. I mean, obviously there'd be pressure there anyway, but for a school that was known for football, and like you said, the culture that's there, because you all really were like a Friday Night Lights type of situation. That's how we all viewed it. Like when I seen the movie and all that, and the first thing I thought was like, oh, or even Varsity Blues farther back than that. Like when I seen that, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's kind of like Richlands right there. That's what that is. So to go that long without one, that had to be a lot of. Obviously, it's a good thing, but the pressure that was on there, I guess, I don't know if y'all were able to. I guess y'all knew it, like you said, it was an unspoken thing. But if you want to talk, like, did people come up to you when you were out, like kind of like I did on the movie, and be like, mention state and stuff?
Yeah, and of course, there's a few guys that you knew in the community that were on that 1992 team, and they would speak of their experiences, and we knew from our freshman year on, we had a lot of talent coming through, and we had that expectation on ourselves, and then of course the people outside, whether it was people that coached you in little league or had known about it, they're like, this is a good group. I don't know that anybody expected us to go to three straight state championships,
Yeah.
because our senior year, I didn't even feel that we should be there, because we went from having 40 kids on that 8th grade team to graduating 10. So and at that point, a lot of kids were playing both ways. And one of our starting tackles was 170 pounds. It was a big shift and drop off as far
Wow.
as a whole roster of talent.
Sounds like the experience from those other years. I mean, the culture that was already set kind of propelled y'all to take it back there again?
Yeah, I think that was a huge part of it. And just the culture again that was built there. The standard was still there, and the team we played in the state semi game, everybody expected to blow us out. Logan Thomas actually played on that team, and that was a pretty cool experience because
Sure.
he was different.
Yeah.
But we beat them to make it to the state championship game.
Was Brookville? Was that the high school?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I remember listening to that on the radio back in the day. Yeah, so I guess while we're on that topic of somebody like Logan Thomas, through your high school career, what are some of the best players you think you did play against that you can remember?
Logan was definitely way up there. A kid by the name of Takeem Hedgeman, he was a running back from Monticello, and actually at that time, I'm not sure if it still stands, but he had the single season rushing touchdown record. I think it was like 52 or 53 in a season.
Wow.
Those are two that stand out. Which I got to watch Ahmad, but he graduated right before I got to high school. I'm not mad that I didn't have to worry about him.
Yeah.
But I'd say those two are probably two of the better ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who was if you had to pick, who was the best player that you played with? That's a hard one for football, I guess, because of positions and stuff. But I mean, I don't know how you would go about that, but
yeah, that one's tough. In their own right, there's quite a few guys like Caleb Jennings. He was great. I mean, he's a spectacular guy. Yeah. If he gets the ball in his hands, good things are going to happen. McCracken, in my opinion, he's one of the better quarterbacks to ever come out of this area. Austin Fuller's another one, great athlete. It's hard to pick because we had so many guys that were super talented. I had the privilege of playing with a lot of talented guys.
Yeah. And I remember watching those guys when I was younger. Being a little kid, and I was such a big fan. We would go home and we'd go in our college football game, and we'd create Richlands football and have Caleb Jennings back there, and have all the guys back there playing and stuff. So a lot of those names that you mentioned and your name are stuff that we listened to growing up, and because I had my grandparents lived in Richlands over towards Bandy. So we'd go there on the weekends, and he'd have the radio blasting every Friday night. So listening to those football games and the guys you mentioned, that was part of my childhood. So it's really cool hearing you talk about it now.
That's awesome.
I've been waiting to ask you this question since we talked about having you on the first time. Yeah. And I don't know. I wish I could remember more about it, and I wanted to look up and study a little bit more on it, but I actually just wanted to not know much because I wanted to hear it firsthand from you. But your YouTube hit is one of my favorite all-time YouTube videos. I don't know how many times when we first I can't remember who showed it to me, but we were we'd watch it and we'd hit it on replay, and every so often if I talked to somebody and y'all's team got brought up, I'd say, "Have you seen the YouTube video?" I'd show them. Yeah. But it was on a punt, I think, and you were covering the punt. Who was that against? And I know it was the playoff game, but what playoff game was it?
That was against Hidden Valley, and that was actually the state semi game. So the game right before the state championship that we won. And that we were playing up there, so it wasn't a home game, but it felt like a home game because at that time our fans traveled as well as anybody. And there were a lot of games we had more fans even on the road than the home team did.
In the moment of it happening, did you I don't even know what the score was in the game, so I don't know, maybe you were so maybe I don't know if it was out of hand yet or if it was, what the deal was, if it was early, but can you remember when it happened thinking how like crazy that was and how great of a hit it was, or is it just a on to the next play thing at the time?
At the time, honestly, which I know the score of the game at the end, we handled it pretty easily, but I think that was we hadn't wrapped it up enough to feel comfortable at that point. But that kid was actually an all-state kick returner, and he had called fair catch up until that point. And once I hit him, the first reaction was I got to find the ball because I knew the ball came loose. So I start trying to find the ball, and I see one of our guys on it, and then I see the kid, and well, I say kid, he was my age, but see him on the ground, the helmet, displaced, and honestly, I was like, oh, this could be bad because he wasn't moving,
Oh,
and then
well,
he started moving, but he was on his hands and knees, and I mean I don't mean this disrespectfully at all. He started crawling towards our sideline, so adrenaline was rushing, but I was also like, this kid may be hurt pretty bad.
Yeah. Or for you to say that it was also an all-state kick returner, and that just kind of adds to it. That I mean, if that hit didn't happen, who knows? He could have took it back, could have changed everything about the game.
Yeah.
I've always said the thing that makes that hit or that moment the best. I mean, obviously, just watching it is, you could tell it was a great football hit and stuff, and the helmet flies off. But the fact that it was in that big of a game, just in my mind, makes it that much better. Because, I mean, you can't – it's not like you were, on a regular season game and you're up whatever, and or something. But that was probably a huge key moment in that game, which it makes it better.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. And any momentum that we wouldn't have had at that moment, it definitely shifted it because, I mean, you could hear everybody in the stands, like the oohs and the ahs. It shifted. Any momentum we may not have had, we gained it pretty quickly there.
And especially at that time, because I know that I think I had dial-up internet at the time, but at the time, things wasn't so easy to just click on and share. And so for that video to spread like it did, I was pretty impressed. I mean, it kind of spoke to how big of a play it was in our area anyway.
Do you have any idea on how many views it's got? Have you checked?
I haven't.
I always forget to look at that. I should look at that next time I watch it.
Yeah, I'd say it may have a few, but like he said, back then it wasn't like things weren't going viral as easy, and maybe it went more, but it's still a cool thing to look back on, and it's a conversation starter a lot of times.
No, for sure.
So while you're staying in high school for a minute, before we move on to some college stuff, but there obviously we talked about Coach Mance and how legendary coach, but him included, were there any specific coaches that stick out that might have, maybe I know we all have them growing up and stuff, that coaches that have touched our lives and made an impact, and all coaches can do that, but like most of us have specific ones that we can think of. And who were some of yours?
Yeah, we had a lot of good coaches. Coach Palmer was the defensive coordinator. He's actually the defensive coordinator at Graham right now. He was a great football mind guy. Terry West was another one. And Coach Tarter, the guy that's actually the head coach at Richlands now, he was my position coach in high school and special teams coach. And me and him were really close. Still are. We still speak, pretty frequently. But I'd say him, he was probably the one I was the closest with.
Just to – and do you have any more questions, Jamar, about high school before we move on to college?
Well, and it's a good segue, but recruiting in high school.
That's what I was going to go into.
That's where you're getting pretty heavily recruited. I'd imagine most of the schools around here, knowing the program at Richlands produced, it's not like just, okay, they're good for 1 year, but you already have a solid foundation there that team in colleges probably know about Richlands. What was the recruitment like?
Yeah, going into my senior year, I was getting a lot of D1 AA looks. Liberty, VMI, William and Mary, Elon, um, schools like that. And I had the opportunity for a recruited walk on at Virginia Tech as a deep snapper. And, uh, and I think it was maybe the fifth or sixth game, I tore my ACL on offense. Um, and a lot of that, of course, dissipated because it wasn't like I was burning it up as a 40 time. I played well for my position, but I wasn't going to the combine and blowing people away with speed. I could run decent, but at that level, you've got linebackers running 4.5s and 4.6s. So um, after that knee injury, it scared a lot of them off. And I still had the opportunity to go to Virginia Tech and as a recruited walk on. Um, I I guess for me at that point in time, I started questioning, can you play at that level if these other schools are bailing out on you? And then that's when I made the decision to go to Emory and Henry.
And when you went to Emory, how big of a change was that? Because I know we talked to Coach Kruger, and he spoke very highly of the talent that he saw when he got to college and how different it was, when he was in high school.
Yeah, it was a big change because you think of, okay, you've got Division 1, D1 AA, D2, and D3, and you think there's such a huge drop off, but really a lot of those guys, it's the difference in being a couple inches too short, or 15 pounds too light, or just little things that it doesn't really separate a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
And then opportunity. There was actually a guy from Bridgewater that we played against that made it onto the 49ers up to the final cut. So, I mean, that speaks. There's guys, of course, you've got the Mount Unions of the world that send guys to the NFL, and they're top tier of that division. But there are plenty of those guys that can play. It's just, hey, you're just a little too short for what we're looking for.
Yeah. Now, we'll go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Cam.
Well, I was going to say, you played with Caleb. Now, did Caleb go to Emory as well?
Yeah, yeah, he did.
Yeah. So was you all teammates there as well?
Yeah, Caleb was just a year older than me, so that was a good thing for me going in. There were a couple other Richlands guys there, so there was that sense of community, and Emory was great for that anyway. There was a real sense of community within the team and even the campus because it's a smaller school, so you got to know just about everybody, and it was just a great environment. And you're not far from home, so it wasn't that hard of an adjustment as far as getting to the college part of it.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they were recruiting you as linebacker. I'm assuming there's some kind of defense there. What was when you got to Emory? Was it I mean, it's hard for any freshman going to college to. I mean, you have to be really really good, obviously, to go D1 and play as a freshman. But I mean, any freshman that gets playing time, it's very. I mean, it's very impressive. What was your expectations going in? Like, were they graduating a lot, or they pretty good at the time? And how much did you expect? Obviously, you always expect a chance to compete, but realistically, in your head, were you looking forward like I'm gonna get to some playing time here, or did you have any idea?
Going in, which I'm a competitor at heart. If there's a challenge, I want a challenge. And the guy that was starting at the Mike linebacker at that time was a senior, my freshman year, and he knew I was, I guess, nipping at his heels or trying to. Early on, I started on just about every special team, and I think by week 3, 4, or 5, somewhere in there, I was alternating series with the Mike linebacker.
Impressive. Going in your, talking about college and stuff like that, did you finish out all your, did you stay at Emory? Or, because I thought I remember reading you also played at Wise. Or am I reading
Yeah,
that wrong?
yeah. No, you're right. I was at Emory my freshman and sophomore year, and then I
Mm-hmm.
transferred to Wise for a year and actually came back to Emory.
Back at Emory.
Yeah, the cost difference between Emory and Wise is a big change, and
Yeah.
that was the biggest reason. Because I mean, Emory is a great education, but it's not cheap. Definitely
No,
not cheap.
no, at
And
all.
I guess they were D3. I'm not sure what they are now, but they weren't like athletic scholarships and all that. How like wasn't that a thing? Like maybe you could get stuff for them, but it wasn't actually an athletic scholarship back. Is that right?
Yeah, they had different grants and other scholarships, but they couldn't offer it as an athletic scholarship. So it was even if you got some help there, it was still.
A lot.
I mean, I think Wise was probably half the price of Emory. So
Yeah. And Wise is a nice campus too. Um,
yeah,
I've had teammates go over and play, and they seem to talk very highly of it. During that season, I read an article earlier, just doing some research and stuff. You actually got to play against Caleb. So how was that when y'all got to go against each other? Was that kind of a fun thing? Because y'all have been teammates for so long, and then now going to college, y'all get to kind of go at each other.
yeah, it was the first time since Little League that we got to play against each other. And it was, I knew his nuances and he knew mine. And throughout the game, when we played against each other, we would, look at each other and kind of smile going back to the huddle. And
Yeah.
it was good. It was a fun time.
I'm sure there's a lot of friendly trash talk there just to get
Oh
each other
yeah,
going.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Uh, who were some? Well, I guess first y'all as a team those years. Did y'all have a lot of success on like record wise, or how was that?
I think my freshman year we went either 6-4 or 7-3, somewhere around there. My sophomore year, I think we went 7-3. Um, I don't think we ever won more than 7 games when I was in college. I mean, we were good, but the way it was set up, you had to win your conference to make the playoffs, and we never made the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to my next question. Was I mean, I know it's probably you, the amount of different teams you played against at Emory, players and all that. It's hard to probably. I mean, you'd have to go back. I probably should have told you to think about this before you come on. But is there anybody you can remember right off that stands out that was just like different or some of the better players you played against in college or with?
Uh, well, of course, getting to play with and against Caleb. I mean, he was a D3 All American, so he was pretty special even into college. Then there were some guys that were, you sit there and think you probably could have played at least one more level up, and like the kid from Bridgewater, I forget his name, but I mean to be a wide receiver running, I think he ran a 4.3 and playing Division 3. That just speaks to how much talent there is out there.
Now, whenever you was playing in college, did you start kind of getting the feeling that you was wanting to coach one day? Because was that? I'll let you lead into that.
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to coach. Um, I mean, I've always loved this game from the time, like I said, I was 10, 11 years old. I've loved it, and even now, the way I watch football is probably different than a lot of people watch football. You, you see some people they just follow the ball, but I try to look for little intricacies and, okay, well, there's something we can try that, or maybe that'll make us better, or, or try to figure out why they do certain things.
Yeah. Now,
Sorry, Cameron.
I'll let you go ahead.
Did you have any, like, I don't know what there was back then as far as, I guess there's not really anything like the NBA has a G League and all that, but did you have any, after you got done, was there any combine things, or was you going to try it and give it a shot or anything like that? Or how did that, was there ever a thought?
The closest I would have came was probably for long snapping. We had actually a guy, and you may be familiar with him, Doug Blevins. He was a kicking coach at Emory, and he had spent time with the Dolphins and a couple other professional teams. And it was extremely ironic. The guy was in a wheelchair, and he was a kicking coach. But, I mean, his phone rang all the time from these NFL teams asking, okay, is so-and-so ready? Because he's working with these guys, getting them ready to either be signed or they're coming back from injury, things like that. And he took the time and he said, I want to time your snaps. So he timed them and he said, do you realize where this falls? And he went on, he said, this is good enough to be on some NFL rosters. Now, whether that would have ever happened, who knows? It's good to think about now, but that was probably the closest or the biggest thought at that point in time.
Yeah.
The coach you're talking about, air kicker in high school, Drake Presley, that's who trained him most of the time. And for Drake, he maybe weighed a little bit over 100 pounds, and he just, at the time, he wanted to be on the team, and in his mind, I don't know that he thought he could contribute, maybe as a linebacker or whatever, but he went out and he acquired the skill to kick. And anytime I talked to him, he talked about real highly of that coach, Coach Blevins, what you said.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, just seeing the progress that he made, I can tell that he must have been a heck of a coach.
Yeah, no, he knew his stuff. Anything to do with snappers, kickers, holders, that guy was a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
So I guess whenever you get finished with college and all that, I mean, you never really coached anywhere high school wise, right? Until here at Honaker. Did you help at Ridgelands at all, any or?
There were a few times, as a volunteer, but nothing full time, anything like that. Right out of college, you talked about Knox Creek, went straight to work there, and worked there till that shut down, and then got the job that I'm in now. And me and my wife were at a place where, there's 3 little girls and twins running around. So up until now, and it's not saying it's easy now, but it would not have been possible beforehand, the place we were with my job, things like that. But and thankfully she's been great to work with me, because without her, then there's no way I could be coaching. So I mean, big shout out to her as well. Without her, this isn't possible.
Yeah.
But no, I always knew I wanted to, and at that time there was a lot of turnover in coaches in this area. Some openings coming open. Actually had an opportunity at another school, and I told them, hey, I've applied for a couple other jobs. Well, just throwing my hat in the ring to get my name out there. And then met with Coach Tiller, and from the time that we met, we hit it off. And it was like we'd known each other for years. I mean, we had the same ideas, philosophies, and went from there, and it's been great.
Awesome. So, whenever you started here at Honaker, we all knew when we started this conversation where it was going to lead to, and it's going to be talking about the air raid at some point. So was that something that you brought to the table, or is that something that Coach Tiller had already had there and y'all just kind of connected?
Actually, when we met, I went in, and not expecting or knowing how he may see me fit into his system and his team, his program. But I came in prepared for a job interview, and
Yeah.
I brought out an offensive manual and a defensive. And most people that talk to me, they expect for it to be be a defensive guy. And I love defense, but I've always had a deep love for offense and understanding it. And I had some really good coaches in college that helped me understand how to study film, how to break things down, how to, the tales of offense and defense that made me, I guess, study film the way I do now. But he asked me, he said, well, what do you got? First thing I pull out is offense because I'm going to shoot my shot. I'm here for a job interview. And he opened it up, started looking at it. He said, man, I love this stuff. This is what I want to do. This is exactly the direction I want to go. I love this. And from there, he said, all right, it's yours.
Awesome. And, among our friend group, we had talked about the air raid before you all had brought it to this area. And I've always been very fascinated with it. I thought that it would work because I think a lot of people that's not familiar with it think that, oh, you have to have a great quarterback. You have to have great receivers to run it. And I'm not saying that y'all do have that. But, you read stuff about Hal Mumme and whenever he started at Iowa Wesleyan that, they didn't have a great roster. And, he kind of used that to play with a lot of teams that were superior than what he had. So I thought that, yeah, this would work here. And to see you all bring it to life, like you all come down here and, we'll go through here in a second some of the stats that you all have achieved already. But I think it's fun to watch as a spectator, but it's also a great offense to get kids out there. I think you have more kids that go out and play, that get to touch the ball more, offensive linemen that, you're not all the time down in the mud and beating yourself up. It's ran different than what most people think.
No, you're absolutely right. And this goes back to, I guess, the earlier part of the conversation where rosters around here are dwindling as far as numbers. And it's not that there aren't kids that could help a lot of football teams that only want to play basketball or only want to play baseball now or just aren't interested, period. But that's kind of the methodology too of bringing this offense. For one, I believe in it. I've got some great resources that have helped me and poured into me, and understanding the intricacies of it and why. And like you said, I'm glad you read up on it and you're knowledgeable about it. That's awesome. But we're fortunate enough to have a quarterback who can stretch the field whenever he wants to, and receivers that can. But at some point in time, we're not always going to have a Peyton Music who has a cannon for an arm, and that's okay. The big thing in this offense is we're taking advantage of what the defense gives us. They're going to be wrong regardless if we execute.
Yeah.
It's I can tell you, Cam is he's talked about this for years about, just this offense, and he's kind of obsessed with it. So when you all kind of started implementing it and putting it in, and that's all he talked about was well before we ever had this podcast. But we'd go hang out. He'd like, he'd explain it to me, break it down, and talk about it and all this stuff. And he got me very curious in it, and I did wonder, what it could a high school around here put it in and do it. And I didn't realize he kind of filled in some holes for me about some of these things, because I thought, well, I was on that side of, you have to have a quarterback that's, this or that, and you have to have all these athletes and stuff. But I had learned a lot, but like you said, you can sustain that apparently from dropping off from year to year, like you said. And it feels like it's something that you could, you're talking about, building a culture and a program. It feels like it's something you could teach at a younger age to get them into it. And then when they come up, they're not that's not a crash course when they get to you all. So it feels like it's something y'all can sustain for a long time.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And the guys that and and of course you go to 5 different schools that run the air raid or a version of it, there's going to be differences. There's a good friend of mine, actually a quarterback that played with me in college. He had access before Coach Leach passed away. He had went to Washington State, met with him, had been to Mississippi State. He got to spend some time with Coach Leach and his staff, and he's been a great resource for me and always been willing, when I've got questions or ideas to bounce off of him, I could reach out to him right now and he would say, well, this works better or this doesn't, or I've had more success or I did this because of this, just a great guy. Him and knowing him and being able to even, grow, I guess, the network of guys I can communicate with now on air raid stuff. And they do some things that I don't do, and I do things sometimes a little differently than they do, but principle wise, it's all based there.
And something I've noticed whenever I was kind of researching it years ago, groups like 92 Mesh Group on YouTube, which Coach Carl Thrippen, then like Coach Joe Salas, a lot of those guys more towards like North Carolina way, but they talked a lot about how it's almost like a cult, like the air raid's almost like a cult in a way, but that kind of reminds me what you're saying right now is that, hey, if you need something, like, hey, what do you all do in this situation? The coach is really tight knit enough to communicate with each other.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And if you're familiar with those groups, that you've probably heard of Drew Piscopo, and that's the guy I'm speaking of. I've talked to Coach Salas before and Coach Coltharp, both of those guys. Stan Bedwell, he's really close with Hal Mummy. All those guys have been. It's I guess it is kind of a cult in a way, but all those guys are great, and they want other people to learn. They want this to be a more prevalent thing. So they've always been great.
Yeah, I think something that I read a book. I've read the book of Michael Leach, like The Swing Your Sword, but I've also read one. It's called The Perfect Pass, and it kind of talks about how everybody was, and it reminds you a lot of this area to a degree. A lot of people were resistant to change and resistant to something like the air raid, and I guess I'm wondering maybe that's why the group is so close knit. Is because when you get told so much that that's not going to work, that's not going to work, and then that kind of brings that group together the way it did. And I know that Hal Mummy runs an awesome little program where he does the air raid certificate and has the class and all that. And then he actually, based on what I read, if you go for a job interview, you can list him down as a reference based on if you get that certificate. So I think that's awesome. I don't know many other big time coaches that do that for specific offense or whatever.
No, you're absolutely right. And again, that like the echoing of this isn't going to work, and even you can look at, and I mean, I have to give a lot of credit to the kids that we have. The system works, but our kids, I mean, and you all have seen the stats. They have worked their tails off, and we started running this last year, but we ran more of what people would call a power raid because we weren't where we needed to be, and the kids understood that, and they knew they started seeing what kind of success we could have, and they've done an excellent job of learning the offense more thoroughly and executing it.
I remember watching you all at the beginning of last season and then kind of keeping up the scores throughout the year and then watching you late in the year. And you could tell there was such a difference between you all at the start of the year to the end of the year. It was very obvious that y'all were a much better team going into the end of the year there last year. But with that being said, did you have an idea with what you all had coming back? That you had a chance to have a pretty special group this year, or was it, obviously they all worked very hard. Cameron's talked about, the 7-on-7s and all the stuff. And so obviously the work has to be put in, but if they did the work, did you kind of know that this could be a really special thing?
Yeah, no, we and like you guys spoke to, as the year went on, the kids started getting more of the offense. I became a better play caller of situational understanding what we were good at that moment, and what we were good enough at. Because you look at Peyton Music right now, and when we first got there as a staff, he wasn't the incumbent quarterback, which we didn't know who was going to be the quarterback at that time, but he had not been the starting quarterback. And just the growth of him from the beginning of last year to where he's at now is such a credit to his work ethic. His brothers, Avery, the same way. He ended up starting at receiver last year, but he has transformed into a monster as a receiver. And then you've got Parker Bandy that, I mean, he's another coach on the field. The kid understands football better than some grown men. Then you've got Aiden Lowe. He's a human joystick. There's just so many kids. Tyler Stevens, another guy that's just a freak athlete. Malachi Lowe, he's our H-back tight end type. We're very blessed with kids that, right now Avery's hurt. And a lot of people are like, okay, well, it's going to drop off a lot. Well, we've got other guys that can execute. It's just going to be in a different way.
I think for me, what stood out so far, like we were over at Lebanon for that first game, and we were kind of where both teams walked through the same gate at halftime, and walking by, I looked at Dad and Cameron was beside of me, and just watching you all watch them walk by. I was like, you never would think they're the small school. You all are a big team. Your line, and that's what I was going to touch on too, is, obviously that's how football is. The line never gets the credit they deserve because of the stats and stuff. But you all have a very, very solid offensive line, because the games I've seen and kind of tuned into a little bit, it's a pocket. Very rarely are you in trouble. Music has to scramble. You have time. It seems like that's a very good group you have there too. So I just wanted to shout them out. But the size you all have across the board at receiver everywhere, it's very impressive, especially for a single A school.
No, you're absolutely right. And our skill guys get a lot of love, and they deserve it. But our guys in the trenches sometimes get left out, and they are a huge part of what we do. Without them doing their job, none of the rest of it works. And I couldn't speak to how proud we are of them enough. But no, as far as size, there's a lot of AA schools that would kill to have some of those kids. Just size and stature and strong. And, you've got, I think Tyler Cole's 6'2", probably 280. Elijah Music, another guy, 6'1", 6'2", 260, 270. Those guys, Maddox Sykes, a good stocky built kid, our center. We're very blessed inside, and then outside you've got Avery as a sophomore. He's 6'2", probably 180, 185, and can run. Parker and Malachi both about 6'1". We're pretty big for a single A school.
Yeah. And me and Jamar talked about, he wasn't at the game last week, but I was. And a few of the plays that Sykes, you said that was your center's name, some of the plays he was making, I swear, it's like I was watching Blindside. I mean, I'm not sure that if everybody noticed that or not, but it was like play after play. I mean, he was taking the guy 15, 20 yards down the field. And I told Jamar that for me, the offense and the receivers and the quarterback, it's all amazing. But that stuck out to me because, man, you don't see that effort a lot of times. And especially in an offense where, you're passing a lot, to see that guy, on running play or whatever, getting taken 15 yards down the field, it speaks to the kid that, I mean, really the whole team, but for him especially, the effort he was willing to put in.
Yeah, and these linemen have bought into, and it, we practice a certain way that enables us to go fast and to get down the field, get lined back up. So they're used to going play after play, giving their max effort and getting ready to run another play, and they do a really good job.
Yeah. Something you
Go ahead.
Well, I did want to throw out the stuff that you put on Twitter, X, whatever, the stats, because I think that the people that watch this, some of them might not have an X account, and I think it is worth mentioning because the stats are just ridiculous through the games that we have. And it's just like you mentioned on there, a lot of them are just limited to 2 quarters because y'all are averaging 50 points a game, which in its own right is amazing. But just to run down the stuff that you put on there right now, Peyton Music, 76 of 117, 65% completion, 1,291 yards passing, 23 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 19 rushes with 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. You go down through here, Aiden Lowe, 36 rushes, 424 yards, 3 touchdowns, 12 receptions, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 punt return touchdown. Parker Bandy, 26 receptions, 368 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 rush, 48 yards, a touchdown, and a punt return touchdown. Avery Music, 17 receptions, 386 yards, 8 touchdowns. Malachi, he's got 9 receptions, 135 yards, 3 touchdowns. And that's Malachi Lowe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we got Jackson Dye, 11 rushes, 79 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 receptions, 48 yards, 1 touchdown through 3 games. Braden Marsh, 16 rushes, 81 yards, 3 receptions, 62 yards, and a touchdown. Nick Ball, 10 rushes, 81 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 reception, 7 yards. Tyler Stevens, 5 rushes, 72 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 reception, 7 yards, 1 touchdown. And Isaac Johnson's got 5 catches, 52 yards. I know it's a lot, but I felt like that each kid deserved to have that on there because, I mean, it's super impressive going through. Y'all haven't really went through a whole lot of games yet. And those stats that they have, I know in my high school career, which, we ran the wing T, but some kids in their offense didn't have that across 4 years.
Yeah, no, they have, and I think there's a lot of records that between last year and this year we've already broken, and if not, hopefully these kids, can sustain this and break a lot of records for an offense that a lot of people said wouldn't work there.
Yeah.
So I'm happy for the kids and to see them enjoying it, and that's the thing is it's not about one kid carrying the ball 30, 40 times. We've got, you just listed off, that many kids touching the ball. And I think we have 7, 8, 9 different kids who have scored touchdowns.
Yep.
Yeah, I've kind of compared it to like in basketball terms, you can win games slowing the ball down and taking time off the clock and stuff, but it's not as for the casual person. It's not a fun game to watch. And I love a good hard running team that lines it up, gets 3 or 4 yards. You can win that way, and it's if you're old school, you love it. But it's just not to the eye. It's not as entertaining. But you all, that's the thing I like about you all too is you all are just fun to watch. You never know that type of style of football. I think can really be like you said earlier, Cameron. Will you can get players out at a younger age knowing that might be what they're going to be doing. It's just all around. I think it's great. I did want to shout out to y'all's defense. We kind of pick on them a little bit here and there because we have to try to find something to a negative is what we talked about the other day. But really, it's not that. I mean, you all have athletes ever on defense. It's a good sized line, and for the most part, you've held everybody in check. I mean, the Rye Cove game, I think Rye Cove's a very good football team. And I think a lot of people looked at that like, well, maybe Honecker's defense is not as tough as what we thought, but I think that was more about just how good Rycova is. And but y'all got a solid defense too, which later on in the year is, you may have to rely on them in a playoff game, maybe before the offense takes off. But I think y'all have just want to give them a shout out. But you being a defensive guy, you can speak to what you see from your defense.
No, we've got a super talented defense. A lot of those same guys that are on offense are playing defense. So it's not that they're not talented. There's a few times, and like you said, Rycove is a very good football team. And we had some mistakes there offensively that put our defense in a bad situation. Turnovers, uh, a few drops here and there, things that aren't normal for us, but it's part of the game. We didn't execute on a few things, but a lot of credit to Rycove. I think there's a good chance we may see them again later. If we take care of our end and they take care of theirs. But no, our defense, they fly to the ball. And you got to realize, too, there's a lot of drives for us that they're not getting much rest. There's a lot of times we're 1, 2, 3 plays, we're scoring, and they're back on the field. So that people don't get to see that part of it and understand, the one advantage if you're going to run a wing tee is you get to slow it down, and any of those guys that are only going on offense, they get a break.
Yeah.
But the way we play, that is one disadvantage, is it puts your defense right back on the field sometimes.
Yeah. I was thinking about that earlier when I was going to ask you about the defense. It almost is y'all's offense is so like you can strike at any moment, and a lot of y'all's touchdowns have been on big plays like that were just a quick turnaround. It can't be. I mean, it's just a single A. You can't have a lot of guys coming off. So
Right.
It's not like you're not like you're scoring fast. Your defense gets a break for a minute, but they're just turning right back around. Most of them are playing again. But it's got to be helpful too to have some of those receivers as defensive backs. I know Parker broke a interception. I think it was a season or a career, but to have those guys back there, there's not a lot of room for error for opposing offenses to throw it.
No. When you've got Parker and of course Avery when he's healthy, and you've got Tyler Stevens, Roman as DBs, you better be careful where you throw it. And I mean, even on defense, Parker is. I can't speak enough about just how his football IQ. We joke all the time that he's another coach out there. So and then you've got Aiden Lowe that he can be a outside linebacker or a middle backer. You've got Tyler Cole, Elijah Music, Blake Shepard. There's just so many kids that contribute to this, and yeah, our defense probably gets a worse rep sometimes than what they really deserve. We kind of put them in some bad situations by scoring the way we do sometimes.
And we ain't going to hold you up too much longer, but I do want to ask you. You mentioned with Ridgelands kind of how it was kind of the Little League and youth programs kind of fed into your high school group. So at Honecker, is this something that you're wanting to in the future start even from Little League? With the air raid. I mean, I know there's certain things you won't be able to do, that young, but a lot of your core principles that you speak of, teaching them that early and then going up through high school, it seems like it'd be a big advantage.
No, and that's something we didn't really get a chance to do last year because we spent a lot of time, trying to install what we wanted to do. But this year we made it a point that, and the Little League has been really receptive. Those coaches, of course, they see it working for our kids, and we had the conversation. And I always use this analogy: you look at Giles and all those years of success they had.
Yeah.
They started in Little League running the single wing. So by the time they got to varsity, they were just, fixing little things, not having to teach fundamentals or terminology. So I actually have passed some, not all, because like you said too, a lot of the stuff we do, they're not it's not beneficial for them, not yet.
Yeah.
But there's some core concepts that they can have success with, and it just gets them used to being in the right position, in the right formation, and they're using some of the same terminology that we are now, so that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, we're rolling at that point.
Yeah. I'm sure even at like your midget level, you can probably harp on the mesh enough to maybe get it sunken in there a little bit when they get to varsity.
Yeah, even my little girls understand mesh. So
Yeah. Do you have anything else, Jamar, you want to add in? I'm going to ask him about the Chilhowie game, but to
I was
end
just
it,
going
but
to
you got anything?
mention the culture thing. And I know it was how when I was growing up, like you had, if the varsity teams when you're a kid, if you don't like, I'm not saying that they got to be great and winning state championships every year, but if they're not, if they're not very good or they don't have somebody to look up to, it's hard for them to be, put that standard and that almost that bar that they know they're going to have to get to push them to work a little harder. And obviously, you all had that at Ridgelands, like you talked about, and so I think you all have taken off this year like you have, and if you can continue that, it's just going to make it better for those kids looking up to the musics and the bandies and all those guys to reach a certain level that they know where a bar's at for what to expect and maybe work harder. So that I think y'all got a thing going on that could last, could keep it going. So I mean, I just think that's all. It's great for the community when you have a good team, but it's also you can't build success for I think with the little league and all that unless you have something for them to look up to. So I think it's great, and we're big fans.
yeah, we appreciate it, and I appreciate all the coverage you guys have given our kids. That's great, and what you guys are doing, you guys are doing well with it, and we've told our kids, this group, that whether they realize it or not, they're laying a foundation. And I think right now it's either 7 or 8 years since Homeacre has won a playoff game. They've been to the playoffs, but haven't won. And that's something that, that's one of our goals this year, of course, is to win a playoff game, to break that streak. And winning, it's a cliche, but winning cures all. You start winning, then more people want to be involved, more people are interested. It
Yeah.
cures a lot.
Yeah. And I know, and this is not saying anything bad about Twin Valley or any of the schools out that way, but I remember I was in high school when those Honecker teams that were going to the state semis and stuff were around, and it was just the standard at that point that they were there. And then after we graduated and years down the road, I mean, they were struggling to put a team together, and they were losing to a lot of schools back out our way. And that's not to discredit them, because those teams out that way, they had some talent too, including Twin Valley those few years. But at the same time, the standard was different. And there's a lot of stuff that plays into that. I'm not trying to say anything bad about those teams, but you can tell now that you are building that standard back up. And, like you said, your goal is to get to the playoffs. I'm sure your ultimate goal is to go further, but just to even get that first playoff game over with and get a win, I mean, that's huge for the standard you're trying to set going forward.
Absolutely.
And
I think, Cam, you're about to jump into it talking about Chilhowie, but what did you all? How's it been going switching over to the Hogle-Higgy this year? That's a pretty good district as far as football goes around here.
Yeah, they're extremely competitive district, and a few of those teams, we had on the schedule before now, but like Holston, that was the benefit game. Now it's a regular season game. Chilhowie and PH, we had them on the schedule in Northwood. Rural Retreat, that's going to be a new one for us. But I mean, top to bottom, it's a really competitive district, and you've got a lot of hard-nosed kids, talented kids throughout the district. So it's good for us to play talented teams like that. you want to be battle tested getting to the playoffs. You don't want to go in, without being tested, and those teams do a really good job of that. And you've got that's the one thing about Southwest Virginia football. Even Grundy, this past week, hard nosed kids, and you get that benefactor versus when you play teams. If you make it far enough to play teams from away from here.
And just kind of going into that, you're getting ready to start a 3-game stretch here against Chilhowie. They're 4-1, and you got Narrows and Patrick Henry. They're both good teams as well. Just to kind of before we get you out of here, you got your homecoming this Friday against Chilhowie. You can tell us a little bit about it, just to get the people that do listen excited for this Friday.
Yeah, no, Chilhowie much improved from last year. They struggled a little bit last year, but I think they're 4-1 right now. A lot of excitement over there for that program. It's always good to see somebody turn it around, especially going 0-10 to right now. Like I said, either 3-1 or 4-1. So they feel good about what they have, and they've got some talented kids. It should be a good matchup. Our kids are excited and ready to get there Friday, finish this week of preparation up.
Awesome. You don't have anything else, DJ Moore? Let's go ahead and finish it out.
I was just going to, we appreciate you coming on, taking the time. We know you're busy and, working and coaching and all that, and it goes into it and the kids. So we really do appreciate it. And hope y'all stay healthy, and we'll probably be over. I'll probably be over there Friday. I ain't looked at a schedule yet, but we're definitely going to try to get back over there. And we have a player of the week thing we give out, and honestly, it's been really hard not to make it one of y'all's guys every week with the stats y'all are putting up. But we'll definitely be over to some games. Can't wait to watch y'all's your road this year through the playoffs, and hope all that. Stay healthy and wish you the best success. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys, and again, appreciate the coverage for all of our kids. I know they enjoy that, and we appreciate you guys.
Thank you. And before we do go, I do want to say also thank you to the high school and Coach Tiller also, and you as well on social media reaching out to us. I know Honaker had sent us a schedule and the roster for you guys, and Coach Tiller has sent us a message of some words of encouragement. So I didn't want to get off this conversation without thanking you all for that, because that's more than what some people are doing. We are thankful. We have had other coaches and stuff reach out too, but it's nice to hear, people that we didn't know prior to this and to reach out to us like that. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I think what you guys are doing, it's going to reach a lot of people, and it's good content, and people love high school sports, and you guys cover, UFC and college and professional stuff too. So it's a good diverse set of content for people. So yeah, I hope you guys keep it up, and we enjoy seeing it. And again, appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
No, I enjoyed it, guys. Enjoyed it.